All right. So today what we are going to do is we are going to continue with the text that we were reading in our last class. This is where we had stopped. Anyone remember where we had stopped? Okay. So Gatni, let's start from here. Okay. If you can mute yourselves, children. Sarthak, beta, if you can mute yourself, bache. Sarthak, mute yourself, bache. Okay, thank you. All right. So we were learning about politeness on saying please. How important a simple word like please is, right? So we learned about this lift man who threw out a man out of the lift because he did not say please. Please wo band kar do piche. Okay. And now let's move on. Just give me a second, children. Okay. I would like to feature in this connection my friend, the polite conductor. By this discriminating title, I do not intend to suggest a rebuke to conductors generally. So you know who's a conductor? The person on the bus who gives you tickets, right? And helps you find a seat. Bus conductor, right? So he says, I would like to talk about my friend who's a very polite conductor. And he says, I'm not against conductors. On the contrary, I'm disposed to think that there are few classes of men who come across the ordeal of a very trying calling better than bus conductors do. So what he's saying is, I know that the job of a bus conductor is very tough. It's not an easy job, right? Here and there, you meet an unpleasant specimen who regards the passengers as his natural enemies, as creatures whose chief purpose on the bus is to cheat him, and who can only be kept reasonably honest by a loud voice and an aggressive manner. So there are some conductors who believe that the passengers are only out to cheat him, to trouble him, and the only way he can control them is by being loud and aggressive. But this type is rare, rather than it used to be. I fancy the public owes much to the Underground Railway Company, which also runs the buses, for insisting on a certain standard of civility in its servants and taking care that standard is observed. In doing this, it not only makes things pleasant for the traveling public, but also performs an important social service. Right? So what he's basically saying is that there is a polite bus conductor that he really respects and admires and who behaves very well with his passengers. And he says the Underground Railway Company has been teaching good manners to its workers, which is very good. It makes the travel pleasant and it improves society. Okay. It is not therefore with any feeling of unfriendliness to conductors as a class that I pay a tribute to a particular member of that class. I first became conscious of his existence one day when I jumped onto a bus and found that I had left home without any money in my pocket. Everyone has had the experience and knows the feeling, the mixed feeling which the discovery arouses. So you realize you have left home and you're not carrying your wallet. So this is a very mixed feeling. It is scary to some extent because you don't know if somebody is going to help you and you don't have any money with you, right? You are annoyed because you look like a fool at the best and like a knave at the worst. So if you ask people for money, they will think you're a cheat of some sort, you're lying and you are out to, that's your way of probably begging or cheating them. You would not at all be surprised if the conductor eyed you coldly as much as to say, yes, I know that stale old trick. So there are so many people who must be telling the conductor after getting onto the bus that I left my wallet at home. And the conductor knows that this is a very common trick that people use. And he's going to say, yeah, I know this trick now. Get off the bus. If you don't have money, you will not go in the bus. And even if the conductor is a good fellow and lets you down easily, you are faced with the necessity of going back and the inconvenience perhaps of missing your train or your engagement. So he says, if you go back, you're going to miss whatever work you had left the house for. You're going to be late. Having searched my pockets in vain for stray coppers and having found I was utterly penniless, I told the conductor with as honest a face as I could assume that I couldn't pay the fare and must go back for money. Oh, you needn't get off. That's all right, he said. All right, said I, but I haven't a copper on me. Oh, I'll book you through, he replied. Where do you want to go? And he handled his bundle of tickets with the air of a man who was prepared to give me a ticket to anywhere from the bank to Hong Kong. So the moment this person said that I left my wallet at home, the conductor was very kind. He says, don't worry, tell me, you don't have to go back for your wallet. Tell me, where do you want the ticket for? And this person was very surprised. Ki, Arey, the conductor is not angry with me. He's like, are you sure? He said, yeah, don't worry. You tell me, aapko kahan ka ticket chahiye, I'll give it to you. And I said it was very kind of him and told him where I wanted to go. And as he gave me the ticket, I said, but where shall I send the fare? Oh, you'll see me someday, all right, he said cheerfully and turned to go. And luckily, my fingers still wandering in the corner of my pocket lighted on a shilling and the account was square. But that did not lessen the glow of pleasure which so good-natured an action had given me. And then suddenly when he was going through his pocket, he realized there is a shilling in his pocket and he was able to pay his fare. He says, but I was so happy to have met this good-natured man. A few days later, my most sensitive toe was trampled on rather heavily as I sat reading on the top of a bus. I looked up with some anger and some agony and saw my friend of cheerful countenance. Sorry, sir, he said. I know these are heavy boots. Got them because my own feet got trod on so much and now I'm treading on other people's. Hope I didn't hurt you, sir. And one day this person was sitting in the bus and reading and somebody trampled his toe. And then he looks up angrily to see it's the same conductor. And the conductor apologizes and he says, Earlier people would tread on my toes, and now I've got these heavy boots and I end up treading on other people's. And he apologizes and he says, I hope I didn't hurt you, sir. He had hurt me, but he was nice about it, so I assured him that he hadn't. When someone asks you so politely and nicely, you tend to say, no worries, it's all right. Right? After this, I began to observe him whenever I boarded his bus and found a curious pleasure in the constant good nature of his bearing. He seemed to have an inexhaustible fund of patience and a gift of making his passengers comfortable. I noticed that if it was raining, he would run up the stairs to give someone the tip that there was room inside. With old people, he was as considerate as a son, and with children, as solicitous as a father. So he was caring to adults and old people alike. He had evidently a peculiarly warm place in his heart for young people and always indulged in some merry jest with them. So he would jest around with them. If he had a blind man on board, it was not enough to set him down safely on the pavement. He would call to Bill in front to wait while he took him across the road or round the corner or otherwise safely on his way. So if a blind person came on his bus, he would make sure he would help that person cross the road or drop him to a corner. In short, I found he irradiated such an atmosphere of good temper and kindliness that a journey with him was a lesson in natural courtesy and good manners. So that means he was always so pleasant and so caring and sensitive. It was good to be around this person. What struck me particularly was the ease with which he got through his work. If bad manners were infectious, so also are good manners. This is what happens. If somebody misbehaves with us, we end up misbehaving back. So he says bad manners are infectious, yes, but good manners are also infectious. If somebody behaves nicely with you, you end up having a good day and you want to do the same to other people, right? If we encounter incivility, most of us are apt to become uncivil, but it is an unusually uncouth person who can be disagreeable with sunny people. It is with manners as with the weather. Nothing clears up my spirits like a fine day, said Keats, and a cheerful person descends on even the gloomiest of us with something of a benediction of a fine day. So we might be having whatever kind of day, but when we meet someone who's polite and respectful and nice, we end up feeling the cheerfulness of that person as well, and we end up having a good day. So it was always fine weather on the polite conductor's bus, and his own civility, his conciliatory address and good-humored bearing infected his passengers. In lightening their spirits, he lightened his own task. His gaiety was not a wasteful luxury, but a sound investment. What that means is, he says when a conductor, he spreads happiness and kindness around him. People like traveling on his bus. They have a good day, and the conductor himself also has a good day, right? So he says the conductor's cheerful nature is like a bright sunshine on a gloomy day. Because he's kind, his kindness is not wasted, and it helps everyone have a good day. Please mute yourself, bete. Thank you. Okay. I have missed him from my bus route of late, but I hope that only means he has carried his sunshine to another road. I cannot be too widely diffused with a rather drab world, and I make no apologies for writing a panegyric on an unknown bus conductor. If Wordsworth could gather lessons of wisdom from poor leech gatherer on a lonely moor, I see no reason why lesser people should not take lessons in conduct from one who shows how a very modest calling can be dignified by good temper and kind feeling. He says that even though he now no longer sees the conductor on the usual route, he thinks that maybe he's brightening up somebody else's day on some other route that he is now going to, right? He still remembers him with a lot of respect and a lot of admiration. And he believes that even ordinary people, even ordinary workers can teach us valuable lessons in life about kindness, about dignity, about good behavior, right? So we can learn lessons from anyone in life, including people with very modest calling, right? It's not just the extraordinary who can inspire you. It can be simple, ordinary people who can be inspiring for all of us in one way or the other, right? It is a matter of general agreement that the war has had a chilling effect upon those little everyday civilities of behavior that sweeten the general air. We must get those civilities back if we are to make life kindly and tolerable for each other. We cannot get them back by invoking the law. The policeman is a necessary symbol and the law is a necessary institution for a society that is still somewhat lower than the angels. But the law can only protect us against material attack. Nor will the liftman's way of meeting moral affront by physical violence help us to restore civilities. I suggest to him that I would have a more subtle and effective revenge if he had treated the gentleman who would not say please with elaborate politeness. He would have had the victory not only over the poor but over himself, and that is the victory that counts. The polite man may lose the material advantage, but he always has the spiritual victory. I commend to the liftman a story of Chesterfield. In his time, तो एक story के बारे में, he's talking about the story that Chesterton had written. Okay. All right. So what is the story? Let's read it together. He says that the law cannot force people to be polite, right? But being physically violent is not the solution. When you are polite to a person who's impolite to you, that is your sweet revenge. And then he talks about a story by Chesterfield. In his time, the London streets were without the pavement of today, and the man who took the wall had the driest footing. I never give the wall to a scoundrel, said a man who met Chesterfield one day in the street. I always do, said Chesterfield, stepping with a bow onto the road. I hope the liftman will agree that his revenge was more sweet than if he had flung the fellow into the mud. So basically what he's saying is, if you meet somebody who is rude, you should not be rude back to that person. You should embarrass that person with your politeness and your good manners. Okay, so this is the chapter on saying please. Now let us move on to the questions. Brainstorming. It says, explain the following words with examples. Okay, humility. Humility is namrata. Then you can be very good at something, right? You could be very smart at math. You could be very good with maps, but you don't show off. You're polite to people. You are full of humility about what you are good at, right? You don't pull other people down by saying, I know this and you don't know this, right? So humility is namrata. Okay. Self-esteem. Self-esteem is what do you feel about yourself? Some people think very high of themselves. Swabhiman. कुछ लोगों का स्वाभिमान बहुत ऊंचा होता है. कुछ लोग अपने आप को बहुत कमजोर समझते हैं. They think they are not good enough, so they suffer from low self-esteem. Some people have high self-esteem and they believe in themselves, right? But there is also another extreme, people who are egoistic and full of themselves. That's the negative side of, that's something that goes beyond high self-esteem. High self-esteem is positive, but when it becomes egoistic, it becomes something else. Gratitude. When you are thankful for something, जब हम pray करते हैं, कृतज्ञता. We pray to God, thank you for giving us food, water, the sun, parents, good education, good manners, this healthy body, right? That is gratitude. To be thankful for what you have. That is gratitude. Okay. Courtesy. Courtesy is respect. You're going to school. You meet a grown-up person, you meet an old uncle or an auntie walking down, you say, Namaste, uncle, right? Namaste, auntie. That is courtesy. You don't know them, you don't have to wish them, but because they're elderly or they're your neighbor, they're somebody you know who are. So you meet your teacher in the corridor. You wish your teacher, good afternoon, sir. Good evening, ma'am. Good morning. That is courtesy. When you show respect for no reason. You have no motive, right? It is just out of respect. That is courtesy. Generosity. Generosity is having a big heart, having kindness in your heart. When you are generous, generous is udar. When you easily give away things to people who need them. That is, people who are generous don't have more, but they have a kinder soul. They believe in kindness. They are generous. So generosity is a quality of those people who are generous. Sympathy. Very interesting. Sympathy. What is sympathy? Sympathy is basically when you take pity on someone. Sahanubhuti. Somebody is passing through something tough and you offer your sympathy to that person. That is sympathy. Daya bhav. Sahanubhuti. Right? Empathy. Empathy is when you understand someone's pain, right? Sympathy is when you pity someone. जब आप कहते हो बेचारा, right? That is sympathy. But when you understand someone's concerns, someone's pain, that is empathy. When you step into someone's shoes. ठीक है? Let me just one second. Let me know if you can hear the translation. If you don't, अगर आपको सुनाई नहीं देता तो मुझे बताना, मैं इसको पढ़ के सुनाऊंगी.
नहीं दिख रही.
सुन रहा है बेटा? Can you hear it?
मैम स्क्रीन नहीं दिख रही.
स्क्रीन नहीं दिख रही बेटा, मैं दोबारा शेयर कर देती हूँ.
नो मैम दिख रही थी.
कोई बात नहीं, दोबारा कर देती हूँ. ठीक है? तो सिंपैथी इज किसी पे दया करना, एम्पैथी इज किसी का दुख समझना. ठीक है? सिंपैथी में आप ऊपर हो, लेने वाला नीचे है. आप किसी भिखारी को भीख देते हो तो हम भिखारी से ऊपर है ना? तो हम ऊपर है और वो भिखारी नीचे है, उसको हम कहते हैं सिंपैथी. बट एम्पैथी इज जब आप सामने वाले का दुख समझते हैं ना. किसी के घर में किसी बड़े बुजुर्ग चले गए है ना, उन्हें छोड़ के चले गए और आप उनको कहते हैं कि मैं समझ सकता हूँ, मैं भी अपनी नानी से बहुत अटैच था और जब वो गई तो मुझे आज तक उनकी कमी खलती है. तो वो एम्पैथी है. आपने भी उस तरह का दुख देखा है तो आप सामने वाले का दुख समझ सकते हैं. दैट इज एम्पैथी. सिंपैथी इज आप किसी को दया भाव से, दया दृष्टि से देखते हैं. उसमें कोई बुराई नहीं है, लेकिन आप उनका दुख समझते नहीं है क्योंकि आपने वो उस तरह का दुख देखा नहीं है. एम्पैथी में क्या होता है, आप उसका दुख समझ सकते हैं. किसी का पेट गुजर गया, किसी ने 20 साल 10-12 साल से कुत्ता पाला था, वो बड़ा बुजुर्ग हो गया और वो अब नहीं रहा. आपके किसी फ्रेंड का कुत्ता बहुत बीमार है या उसकी किसी तरह से मौत हो गई, तो आप समझ सकते हैं एक अपना पेट खोने का दुख, है ना. तो वो एम्पैथी हो गया, वो सिंपैथी नहीं है. अगर आपने कभी कुत्ता नहीं पाला और आपका फ्रेंड अपने कुत्ते के लिए रो रहा है तो दैट, और आप कहते हो बेचारा बहुत दुखी है, दैट इज सिंपैथी. बट आपने भी कभी कुत्ता पाला है और आप समझ सकते हैं उसका दुख, दैट इज एम्पैथी. ठीक है? तो सिंपैथी और एम्पैथी में दैट इज द डिफरेंस. ओके, नाउ soft skills at your workplace. The need for soft skills at your workplace. Now, first thing is, what are soft skills? Soft skills is to be able to work together as a team, to be able to communicate what you're thinking. These are all soft skills, है ना? तो कहीं पे भी in order to work, in order to do well, in school, in college, at work, you need soft skills. So soft skills में क्या क्या आता है? Soft skills में आपके आता है written and verbal communication. Written is how well can you write an email, write a letter. कितने politely, कितने तरीके से आप अपना written में you can put your ideas on paper. Verbal is orally. बोल के आप कितनी विनम्रता से, कितनी सहजता से, कितनी how much humility and courtesy can you put your point across orally, verbally. और verbal communication में हमें लगता है सिर्फ बोलना आता है, but verbal communication में सुनना भी आता है. If you don't listen to the other person, there is no real communication happening. आप रेडियो सुनते हो, रेडियो is one-sided communication, right? The other person keeps speaking. You can turn down the volume, you can switch it off, it doesn't matter. So that is why verbal communication means speaking and listening both. Without listening, there is no verbal communication, right? So you have to be a good listener and you have to be a good speaker as well. You should be able to express your ideas clearly, right? Ways of interacting with others. What are the ways of interacting with others? How do you behave with other people? Are you courteous? Are you generous? Are you empathetic and sympathetic? Do you show humility? आप दूसरों से कैसे behave करते हैं? Politely, respectfully, or rudely? Right? So that is how you interact with others. Creative abilities. Creative abilities में creativity is important for solving problems. आप किसी situation में फंस गए हैं, आप क्या करें? So a person who is creative will be able to think of a way out कि इसमें हम ये कर सकते हैं, इसको हम ऐसे कर सकते हैं, इसको ऐसे ना करके हम ऐसे करें तो क्या होगा? That is what a creative person does. Thinking out of the box, finding solutions to problems. तो creative ability, thinking hats इसको हम कहते हैं, right? Putting on your thinking hat and finding solutions to problems. Emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is when you understand what the other person is going through. When you don't lose your temper easily. कितना होता है ना, एक बंदा चिल्लाया, उस पे दूसरा चिल्ला दिया, फिर वो दोनों एक दूसरे पे चिल्लाने लगे. That is not a show of good emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is when you show maturity, you show more emotional control, and your response is well thought. Your response is one. हम कहते हैं ना, आपकी फीलिंग्स का रिमोट कंट्रोल किसी और के हाथ में नहीं होना चाहिए, आपके हाथ में होना चाहिए. You should be able to understand your emotions, use your emotions, and manage your emotions in a positive way, in an effective way.
Just let me power.
कुछ लोग होते हैं ना, उनको गुस्सा दिलाना बहुत आसान होता है. कोई कुछ बोल दे और वो 1 मिनट में चीखना चिल्लाना शुरू कर देते हैं. Those people have very poor emotional intelligence, right? So emotional intelligence is also an important part of soft skills. Okay, now this is very interesting. Read the text and state whether the following are true or false. Bitter problems in day-to-day life can be solved by sweet words. जो प्रॉब्लम्स आती हैं लाइफ में, उनको प्यार से हल किया जा सकता है. That is true. This is definitely true. Great wars could have been avoided by a little courtesy. बड़ी बड़ी लड़ाइयाँ, अगर जो ऑपोजिट पार्टीज हैं वो एक दूसरे के साथ अगर रिस्पेक्टफुल रहे तो शायद बड़ी बड़ी वॉर्स होने से बच जाए. This is also very true. Okay. Observance of etiquette in a normal situation is important, but more important is their observance when the situation is adverse. Very important. So this one says that normally we should be respectful, but when there is a problem, we should be even more polite and more respectful. This is also very true. Because if there is a problem and you are not polite at that time, things can get worse. Right? एक बंदा गुस्से में है and the other person is not respectful, तो बात और बढ़ जाएगी. Right? So, problem के समय it is even more important that one shows etiquette, manners, soft skills, sensitivity. Okay. Words like please and thank you help us in making our passage through life uneasy. This is false. Words like please and thank you help us in making our passage through life easy. Un will be removed from here, then it is true. If it says uneasy, this is false. Right? So you can correct this statement and say, words like please and thank you help us in making our passage through life easy. Okay? The law permits anybody to use violence if another person is discourteous. No, this is false. Even if the other person is not showing politeness, you cannot use violence against that person. This is false. So, the correct statement will be, the law does not permit anyone to use violence if another person is discourteous. Right? All right. Select the appropriate sentences which suggest the theme of the essay. So, we've just read this theme. We have just read this theme on the, we have just read this essay, and let's find out what is the theme. What is the main idea? What is it that the writer wants us to learn through this essay? What is he trying to teach us? Why is this chapter in our book? What do they want to teach us? Right? All right. The essay tells us about courtesy, civility, morality, responsibility, and control. Yes, definitely. True. So, this one is correct. Sorry, wait. This one is correct. The essay explores the difficulties that can be incurred by an individual when dealing with the public. No, that's not the theme. That is one of the examples that the writer has given, but that's not the theme of the essay. So, this one is cross. One can keep one's peace of mind without having to lower themselves to the level of the perceived offender. So he says when someone does something wrong, we don't have to come down to their level. अगर कोई बहुत नीचे दर्जे का हमारे साथ बिहेवियर कर रहा है, उसके साथ हमें नीचे आने की जरूरत नहीं है. We can keep our peace of mind by not doing the same wrong thing that the other person is doing. Definitely, this is true. This is right. And the example he gives is of the lift man. He says just because that guy was rude doesn't mean the lift man had to use violence against him. Right? Now, people with low self-esteem are generally difficult to work with, and they look down upon others to get a feeling of superiority. This is true, but this is not the theme of the essay. Essay mein, this is not what the writer is trying to tell us. that जिन लोगों की low self esteem होती है वो misbehave करते हैं, और जिनकी high self esteem होती है they are easier to work with. It may be true, it is true, but it is not the theme of the essay. Theme of the essay is, why did the writer write this essay? What does he want us to learn? Right? So, definitely the first one and the A and C. These are the appropriate sentences that suggest the theme of the essay. B and D are not the theme of the essay. Okay. Find the reasons for the liftman's uncivilized behavior. Why did the liftman throw that man out of the bus? What happened? What is wrong? The passenger spoke to him rudely, right? So liftman felt insulted. He said, this person is disrespecting me because I'm a liftman. And he got angry. He lost his temper. Why? Because he wanted to be respected. He said, I'm doing a respectful job and you need to respect me. So that is why probably the liftman got angry with the passenger and decided to throw him off ask him to get off the lift. Right? Okay. List the people and the behavior that made the passenger rude and ill-mannered. So we don't know that, but there is an assumption in the writing that probably the housemaid behaved with the wife, and the wife in turn misbehaved with this. He says that maybe he was scolded by his wife, who was upset because of the cook, and the cook was upset because of the housemaid. So we don't know for sure, but the writer is assuming. So you can add this here. So probably the wife was upset with the cook, who was in turn upset with the housemaid, upset the wife, who then upset the cook and the wife and the liftman, and then the liftman threw the man out. So how bad behavior travels, how it impacts everyone, right? You can write it in any order that you want. We don't know for sure. Okay, good manners are required in our daily life by making our social contacts more cooperative and friendly. So here is a situation. So illustrate the behavior of polite conductor to different people. So there is a whole lot of incidents mentioned about the polite conductor. You can pull it out from there. He says the writer's sensitive toe was trampled on and the conductor says sorry. In rain, when he's dealing with people, what does he do? Okay. He would stop the bus and tell people that there is room inside. You can come into the bus. So they don't get wet in the rain. Right? Then dealing with old people, he behaves very kindly. So when people are out in the rain, he tells them there is room inside the bus. They can come in. When he's dealing with old people, he behaves kindly with them. When he deals with children, he jokes merrily with them and makes them feel comfortable and safe in the bus. When he's dealing with young people, he treats them warmly and lovingly. And dealing with a blind man, he will help them cross the road safely, or help them cross the road, or drop them to a safe location to make sure they don't lose their way, right? Okay, discuss and write the impact of good temper and kindliness in the society in the light of a good-mannered conductor. So here you can write about how different people are using the bus. There are students, there are office goers, there are adults, there are old people, and how the good conductor makes sure everyone has a good day, right? So you can write that as examples. Then a modest calling can be made dignified by good temper and kindly feeling. This is also a beautiful sentence. It's not about being someone very powerful or very high and mighty or at a very exalted position. You can be doing simple work, but you could be respectful, right? You could be kind, and you could spread happiness and cheer wherever you are, whatever you are doing, right? And he gives the example of this modest bus conductor, right? The service of the police is necessary for implementation of law in our society. Do you think this service is this service required for good social environment? Of course, we know that the police can implement laws, but the police cannot implement politeness, good social skills, good soft skills. That is something we need to do on our own if we want a good quality of life. So these are all related to what we've read. You can write these in different paragraphs. And then he committed the crime in broad daylight. That means during the day when everyone could see. It's not something that happened in the darkness. I had a cup of strong tea. Strong tea is usually a lot of tea, less milk, right? Not rich tea. Rich tea would have lots of milk, cream. Strong tea is lots of chai patti. Okay. Strong tea, fast train, these are called collocations. These are groups of words that go together. So you can choose from here. There are collocations here that you see, these are words that are used together. For example, regular exercise, right? Regular exercise, midday meal, key concept, fast food, try hard, richly decorated, free time, traffic jam, social justice, and wild animal. So these are sets of words that go together, right? These are called collocations. So you can write them down. So after the class, I'm going to give you this resource and you can come up with. And then here, this is a very interesting list that you should work on. Where do you use big and where do you use well, right? So, big mistake, big surprise. So you can use big here, big mistake, big surprise, big house, big problem, big city, big dreams. She has big dreams. Big success. And well, where will you use well? Well dressed, well known, well behaved, well educated, well planned, well mannered, well prepared. Right? So this is where you can use, well, these are some examples that I've given you. You can also come up with your own, right? Now these are words that you can make from this root word and fill in the blanks, right? I asked Sumit to sharpen my pencil for me, right? Lena was eating a very crunchy apple and obviously enjoying it. This picture looks colorful. I'm afraid that your behavior is just not acceptable. I like my elder brother. He's very helpful, right? So, and then you can work on this table where there is noun, verb, adjective, and adverb from the same list of words, right? So I'm going to be sharing this resource with you. This is a letter writing that you can do, right? And this is legally what is wrong and morally what is wrong. Moral ke liye, you cannot go to jail. Nobody is going to send you to jail. But legal offense hai, to you can go to jail, right? You can be punished. But moral is आपको करना चाहिए, लेकिन आप नहीं करेंगे तो कोई आपको सजा नहीं देगा. But you will not be liked. You will not be respected, right? So these are suffixes, prefixes. Prefix is what comes at the beginning of the word. Suffix is what comes at the end of the word. So I'll be giving you this resource. This is what we must do in our day-to-day life, what not to do, how not to say it, and what is the right way of saying it, right? What is the polite way of saying it, okay? So I'll be sharing this resource with you. The solutions, make sure you practice writing, okay? This will have the answers and this will also have all the new words in your list. In this chapter, all the new words that you have, you will have the word, you will have the English meaning, the Hindi meaning, the Marathi meaning, and a sentence in the same context. Okay? Make sure you practice this new vocabulary and also write down the answers to these questions to prepare you for your exam. All right, beta?
Yes, ma'am.
So after the class, you'll get this resource, beta. Likh ke practice karo. There is no other way to learn English than to hear the language, speak the language, and write the language, right?
Okay, ma'am.
All right, mera bacha. I'll see you in the next class. Bye-bye.